I understood I was in trouble the night I stood on my back porch and watched the light in the neighbor's kitchen feel warmer than my own home. My wife was asleep in a recliner, the TV whispering, her hand still curled around the remote like she'd been holding on to something that wasn't there anymore. The rain had just stopped. The boards under my bare feet were cold. Across the fence, a soft glow framed a woman moving slowly, alone. I was 58, dependable on paper and tired in places no one could see. I worked maintenance for the school district, keys on my belt, checklists in my pocket, the kind of job where people only notice you when something breaks. I'd done everything the right way for decades. Married young, paid bills on time, fixed what needed fixing. Inside, it felt like a house with the lights turned off room by room. My marriage didn't crash. It faded. Conversations became schedules. Touch became accidental. An elbow at the sink, a quick handoff of a plate. Nothing that asked for more. We were polite. We were tired. And somewhere between those two words, I stopped feeling seen. Her name was Hannah, 50, newly divorced. She moved into the blue house beside ours in early spring with a careful smile and the kind of calm you learn after storm. The first time I saw her, she was kneeling in her front yard, planting a young maple like she was making a promise to herself. Light brown hair, a hint of silver, falling loose from a clip. Dirt on her gloves. Focus in her eyes. We met at the mailbox cluster by the curb. I was sorting bills, already irritated at nothing, when she stepped beside me with a stack of forwarded letters. "Looks like the last guy didn't believe in change of address," she said. Her voice was gentle, but steady. I laughed, an actual laugh that surprised me. She looked up, and her eyes held mine a second longer than strangers usually allow. Not flirtation. Recognition. After that, we became the kind of neighbors nobody talks about. A nod when trash bins went out. A quick comment about the weather. Then one evening, I was wrestling with a crooked gate hinge, and a flashlight beam bounced across my yard. Hannah walked over, cardigan wrapped tight, holding a small toolkit. "I saw you fighting with it yesterday," she said. "If you want, I can lend you the right wrench." The fact that she'd noticed me yesterday hit harder than it should have. I took the wrench. Our fingers brushed. A quick graze, nothing improper. Yet my skin remembered it all night. I told myself it was ridiculous. Still, I replayed the moment, not because of her hand, but because she'd offered help without making me feel like a burden. A few mornings later, I stepped outside and smelled coffee. Strong, clean, like it meant business. Hannah was on her porch with 2 mugs. She lifted one slightly, questioning. I should have said no. I walked over anyway. She handed me the cup, and our fingers lingered a fraction longer. "Too strong?" she asked. "Perfect," I said, and it was the first honest word I'd spoken all week. We talked in small circles. Weather, lawns, the best hardware store in town. Then, as if testing the water, she said, "Divorce doesn't happen in one day. It's a slow leak." She stared out at her yard. 1,000 little absences. The phrase landed in me with a dull thud. I didn't tell her my own leak had been going for years. That night, my wife never asked why I smelled like coffee. Not because she was heartless, because she assumed the answer wouldn't change anything. We ate dinner in silence, the refrigerator humming between us. Our knees touched under the table, and neither of us moved closer. A storm rolled through the next weekend, and the power flickered. I went out to check the breaker box, wind sharp enough to sting. Hannah's porch light clicked on, and she appeared in the doorway, hair damp, cardigan clinging to her shoulders. "You okay?" she called. I nodded, but she crossed the yard anyway, careful on the slick grass. When she reached me, she didn't stop at the polite distance people keep. She stood close enough that I could feel her warmth push back against the cold. In that tight space, words slipped out of me like they'd been waiting for rain. Sometimes I don't know how I got so far from my own life. I meant it as a joke. It came out as a confession. Hannah's face softened, not pity, understanding. "Maybe you've been carrying it alone," she said quietly. I went back inside, soaked, dripping onto the rug, and my wife didn't look up from the TV. I stood there, towel in my hands, and realized the danger wasn't Hannah's closeness. The danger was the part of me that had started to breathe again. By the end of that week, I caught myself listening for her screen door, timing my evenings to the hour she watered her plants. I hadn't cheated. Not even close. But something inside me had already crossed a line, and I knew it, because for the first time in years, I felt hope, and I didn't know where to put it. I tried to treat it like a weather front, something that would pass if I kept my head down and stayed indoors. I threw myself into work, into errands, into the kinds of small tasks that make a man feel useful without making him feel anything else. I replaced fluorescent tubes at the middle school, cleared a clogged drain behind the gym, fixed a stubborn lock on the staff entrance. My hand stayed busy. My mind didn't. Even my jokes fell flat. Hannah's porch was in my line of sight whenever I backed the truck into the driveway. I told myself I wasn't looking. Then I'd catch the movement of her silhouette through the screen door, and my chest would tighten, like my body had learned her schedule before my pride could stop it. One late afternoon, I found a note tucked under my windshield wiper. Simple handwriting. No hearts, no flirting, just neat lines. Package delivered to my porch by mistake. I kept it dry. Come by when you can, H. My first instinct was to walk over immediately. My second was to wait, like hiding from my own conscience. I waited until my wife started a phone call with her sister, and the house filled with laughter that didn't include me. Then I stepped outside. Hannah met me at her door holding a cardboard box wrapped in a trash bag. Her hair was pulled into a loose knot, and there was a smudge of flour on her cheek like she'd been trying to start over in the most ordinary way possible. "You're saving my life," I said, and meant the package, meant something else too. She smiled, small and careful. "It's just neighborly." Inside her entryway, the air smelled like lemon and warm bread. Nothing fancy, clean counters, a lived-in couch, a throw blanket folded with the kind of attention that comes from living alone. A photo frame sat face down on a side table. I didn't ask. She didn't explain. "I made too much," she said, nodding toward the kitchen. "Banana bread. If you want a slice." I should have said no. I should have taken my box and gone home to my quiet marriage and my safe distance. Instead, I followed her into the kitchen like my feet had decided for me. She cut 2 slices, slid one onto a plate, then hesitated. "Do you drink tea?" "Coffee man," I said automatically. "Then I'll pretend I didn't hear that," she replied, and the dry humor in her voice loosened something in me. We ate standing by the counter, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth she gave off when she shifted her weight. The window over her sink caught the last light of day and turned it soft. "How's your wife?" she asked, gently, like she was stepping around glass. The question hit like a fingernail on a bruise. "Fine," I said, then hated the word the second it left my mouth. Fine was what you said when you didn't want to talk about the truth. Hannah watched me for a moment, not pushing. "You don't have to answer if you don't want to." I swallowed. "We're functional," I admitted. "Two people who know the routine." She nodded as if she understood exactly what that meant. That's how it was with my ex. For a long time I thought routine was the same as safety. She took a breath, eyes on the tea kettle. Turns out it can also be a kind of loneliness. Silence settled between us, not awkward, honest. The kind of silence that feels like a door left open. I heard myself say, "When did you know it was over?" Hannah's fingers tightened around her mug. When I realized I was doing all my living inside my head. Smiling, nodding, keeping the peace. And still feeling invisible. She looked up then. No one cheats because everything is perfect. They cheat because something's already broken. Her words landed hard because they were close to something I'd been refusing to name. I wasn't proud of a thought that flashed through me. How easy it would be to step into the warmth of her kitchen and not go back. I forced myself to move, to pick the package, to break the spell. "I should go," I said. Hannah walked me to the door. On her porch the air had turned colder. She stopped too close again, not on purpose, just in that natural way some people exist, present unguarded. "Thank you," I said, meaning more than bread and a dry package. Her eyes softened. "Take care of yourself," she whispered, and it wasn't a goodbye. It was a warning. I stepped off her porch, and the guilt came rushing in, sharp and clean. I hadn't done anything. But I'd wanted to. And wanting was its own kind of betrayal. That night my wife asked, without looking up, "Where'd you get the banana bread?" "Hannah," I said. A pause. "The new neighbor?" "Yeah." "Nice," she murmured, already moving on. No suspicion. No curiosity. Just a blank space where a marriage used to ask questions. I lay in bed listening to my wife's breathing and stared at the ceiling until it blurred. Across the fence, a porch light clicked off. In the dark, my hand found the empty space between us on the sheets, and the emptiness felt louder than any storm. The next time I saw Hannah, it wasn't planned. That was the problem. It was a Tuesday in late October, the kind of day that smells like wet leaves. I came home early because the district office closed for an inspection, and the house felt too quiet. My wife was at her sister's again. No note, no text, just an empty sink and the click of the thermostat. I stood in my driveway with my keys in my hand, telling myself to go inside, to be the man I'd always been. Then Hannah's garage door rolled up, and she stepped out with a box of old holiday lights, frowning at the tangled mess. "You want a hand?" I called before I could stop myself. Her smile came slow. "Only if you're good at untangling disasters." "I've had practice," I said, and the joke tasted bitter. We sat on the edge of her open garage, the string of lights between our hands. Our fingers kept meeting in the wires, small touches, accidental, then less so. Every brush sent my pulse climbing like a warning. "You're quiet today," Hannah said. "So are you." She exhaled. "My ex messaged me. He wants to check in." She made air quotes. Translation, he's lonely. "Did it shake you up?" "A little," she admitted. "Not because I miss him. Because I hate that a part of me still wants to be chosen." Something in me cracked. "I know that feeling," I murmured. "Being in the same room with someone and still wondering if you matter." Hannah stared at the lights. "That's not how it's supposed to feel." "No," I said. "But it's how it's been." Silence settled. A car passed, tires hissing on the wet street. Hannah's shoulder touched mine, barely, and neither of us moved away. The warmth of her through my jacket felt like permission. "I should go," I said, the same words as before. Hannah turned her face toward me. "Do you want to?" My mouth went dry. She wasn't asking for drama. She was asking for honesty. And I failed. I leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull back. She didn't. Her hand rose to my cheek, warm and sure, and when her lips met mine, it wasn't reckless. It was quiet. It was the kind of kiss that says, "I see you." The world didn't spin. It settled. Then the guilt hit. I pulled away, breathing hard. "Hannah, I can't." She didn't look angry. She looked wounded. "I know," she whispered. "Don't make me your escape." That line made me step back into the cold. At home, everything was in its place. Folded blanket, framed photo, a life arranged neatly enough to hide a collapse. My wife came in later with grocery bags talking about traffic. I watched her mouth move and realized I couldn't hear her. Not because she wasn't speaking, because I was already somewhere else. That night, when she fell asleep beside me, I understood the worst part. The kiss wasn't the betrayal. The betrayal was how alive it made me feel. In the morning, I parked behind the maintenance shed and sat there until my hands stopped shaking. Then I called my wife. When she answered, cheerful and distracted, my throat closed. "I need to tell you something," I said. A pause. "What is it?" "I kissed someone," I forced out. Silence. Then, very softly, "Who?" I closed my eyes. "Hannah. Next door." The line stayed quiet. So long I thought she'd hung up. When she spoke, her voice didn't rise. It went flat, like a door locking. "Come home after work. We're going to talk." I spent the day fixing things that didn't matter. Every hour felt like a verdict approaching. When I turned into my street, Hannah was on her porch. She saw my truck and went still. I didn't stop. I couldn't. That evening my wife sat at the kitchen table, eyes red but dry. She didn't scream. She asked questions in a voice that sounded borrowed. I answered until my shame ran out and only the truth remained. We'd been starving each other, slowly, for years. My wife's first question wasn't why. It was, "How long have you been unhappy?" That landed like punch. I told her the truth. It didn't start with Hannah. It started with years of quiet, dinners with the TV on, weekends in separate rooms, the way we stopped reaching for each other and called it peace. "Did you sleep with her?" she asked. "No," I said. "But I wanted to." She wiped her face, furious and exhausted. "So you were already halfway gone," she whispered. I stepped toward her out of habit, and she lifted a hand. "Stop." That small gesture felt like a door closing. "I won't compete with a woman who lives next door," she said. The next morning, I saw Hannah at her mailbox. I tried to speak, but she shook her head gently, already understanding. "I'm sorry," I managed. "I know," she said. "Do the right thing." Then she went inside, and her porch light clicked off, like a promise being taken back. For 2 weeks after I confessed, the house felt like a hotel we both happened to be staying in. We spoke in logistics, who would pick up prescriptions, whose turn it was to pay the utility bill, while the real words sat between us like broken glass. I slept in the guest room. My wife, Diane, kept the bedroom door closed as if it could keep the past from leaking out. On a Thursday night, she slid a business card across the kitchen table. A counselor. Marriage and family. Her hand shook, but her voice didn't. "If we're going to end this," she said, "I want to know we didn't end it, because we were too scared to talk." My buddy Ray, a retired firefighter who'd known me since my 20s, didn't soften anything when I told him. He stared at me over his coffee and said, "You're not a villain, but you were a coward. Own it." Then he added quieter, "Don't turn this into a war. Make it clean." Ray was the kind of friend who didn't offer comfort first. He offered direction. The first session was brutal in a quiet way. No shouting. Just Diane describing our life like she was reading a report. Years of work, routines, holidays, the steady disappearance of touch. When the counselor asked when we'd last gone on a date, Diane blinked like she'd been asked the year of a war. I opened my mouth and couldn't answer. The shame wasn't only the kiss. It was how easily I'd let the marriage go numb. In the hallway, afterward, Diane's sister called. I could hear her voice through the phone, sharp, protective, already painting me as the simplest story. Bad man, good woman. Diane listened without arguing, then hung up and looked at me with exhaustion. "Everyone wants me to hate you," she said. "I don't know if that's what I feel. I just feel empty." After the second session, Diane surprised me. We stopped at a diner on the way home, our old place from the early years. She ordered pie. I watched her fork tremble over the crust and remembered how she used to laugh with her whole body. "I miss you," she said suddenly, not as a romantic line, but as a fact. "And I hate that I do." That night in the hallway, she reached for my sleeve. It wasn't an invitation. It was a test. I turned toward her, slow, and wrapped my arms around her like I was holding something fragile. Her hair smelled like the shampoo I'd bought her for Christmas years ago. She leaned into me for 3 breaths, then pulled back with wet eyes. "Don't confuse comfort with love," she whispered, and walked away. Days later, I saw Hannah watering her plants in the cold sun, scarf tucked under her chin. I stayed inside. I deleted her number I'd never saved. I rerouted my evening walks. Every part of me wanted one more conversation, one more look that said I mattered. But Ray's words rang in my head. Clean. I didn't get to use Hannah as anesthesia for my own life. In counseling, Diane finally said the sentence that changed everything. "I stopped reaching for you because every time I did, I felt rejected." My throat tightened. I had no defense. I'd been tired, distracted, proud. Whatever excuse a man uses to avoid admitting he's afraid. "And you stopped reaching," she continued, "because you decided silence was safer than failing." I stared at the carpet. "I didn't know how to fix us," I said. So I waited. The counselor asked what I wanted now. The honest answer hurt. I wanted Diane to be okay. I wanted us to forgive each other. But I didn't want to pretend or rehearse affection like a duty. A week later, we sat on the back porch, the same boards that had held me during that rain. Diane handed me 2 mugs of coffee like it was a peace treaty. "I don't hate you," she said, "but I can't live next to the woman you ran to when you felt lonely." I didn't run. I started, then stopped. because I had. We talked until the sun disappeared. About fear, aging, how being practical can become a cage. About the little moments. Her hand on my shoulder that I'd missed, my face turned away when she tried to kiss me. The nights we chose sleep over each other. By the end, the decision arrived gently, like a tide. We would separate, not as enemies, as two people admitting the truth before it turned into poison. The following weekend we signed papers at a small office, hands steady, hearts not. In the parking lot Diane looked at me and managed a sad smile. "I hope you learn to speak before you break," she said. I packed my things in cardboard boxes labeled with a marker. Tools, books, winter. Diane watched from the doorway, arms folded, then surprised me by placing my old wedding band in my palm. "Not as punishment," she said. "As closure." The metal felt heavier than it ever had. We stood there a moment, two strangers with history. When I drove home, Hannah's porch was dark. I sat in my truck for a long time, listening to my own breathing, and understood something I hadn't wanted to. The mistake didn't begin with her. The mistake began with silence, and I was finally done protecting it. The first winter after the divorce, I learned how loud a house can be when there's only one heartbeat inside it. I moved into a small rental across town, 2 bedrooms I didn't need, beige walls, a furnace that kicked on like a tired animal. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It was honest. There was no one to blame it on anymore. I tried dating once. A woman Ray set me up with, nice, polite, safe. We ate dinner, talked about grandkids and gas prices, and I spent the whole time feeling like I was borrowing someone else's life. When she leaned in for a goodbye kiss, I turned my cheek. Not because I was loyal to anyone. Because my body knew what real warmth felt like now, and it wasn't that. I didn't see Hannah for months. I avoided my old street at first, like it was a bruise. Then one Saturday in early spring, I drove back to pick up mail that still trickled to my former address. The trees were just starting to bud. I parked, walked up the driveway, and there she was, on her porch, holding a watering can, sunlight caught in the strands of her hair. She froze when she saw me. I stopped too. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. It felt like standing at the edge of something deep, remembering you once jumped. "I heard," she said finally, voice careful. "Yeah," I answered. "It's done." Hannah set the watering can down with deliberate calm. "Are you okay?" That question, simple, direct, hit me harder than any accusation ever could. My throat tightened. "Some days," I said. "Most days I'm just learning." She nodded, eyes not leaving mine. "Learning is better than hiding." I should have ended it there. A polite goodbye. A nod. But my life had already taught me what happens when you keep everything polite. So I did the one thing I'd never done when it mattered. I told the truth before it turned into damage. "I'm not here to pull you back into anything messy," I said. "I'm here because I owe you an apology. I put you in a position you didn't deserve." Hannah's jaw tightened. "I was lonely too," she admitted. "But I didn't want to be someone's secret." "I know." I swallowed. That kiss wasn't a plan. It was a warning I ignored. Her eyes softened slightly. "And now I'm trying to be a man who doesn't wait until everything breaks." We stood there on her porch, the space between us filled with memory. She reached out, not to touch me, not yet, just to tug her cardigan tighter against the breeze. That small movement made me want to step closer, and I forced myself to stay still. I didn't get to take closeness like a right anymore. I had to earn it. Weeks passed. Then a text came from her one evening. "I'm making too much chili. Want to take some off my hands?" No hearts. No flirting. A doorway offered carefully. We started over like adults who knew the cost of mistakes. Dinner once a week. Long walks where we talked about everything we'd been afraid to say in our old lives. My loneliness. Her divorce. The ways pride can pretend its strength. Sometimes she'd reach for my hand in the dark, and I'd feel my whole chest soften. The first time I kissed her again, months later, it was on her porch under a string of small lights she'd hung up. I asked, "Is this okay?" She nodded. Her lips were warm, familiar, and this time I didn't run afterward. I stayed. I talked. I listened. A year later, we moved in together. People had opinions. My ex-wife's sister called me names I won't repeat. A guy from my old neighborhood called Hannah a homewrecker to her face at the grocery store. Hannah didn't cry. She looked him in the eye and said, "You don't know the whole story, and you don't get to write it." That was Hannah. Steady backbone, gentle heart. Our family didn't happen like a fairy tale. It happened like real life. Hannah had 2 teenagers from her first marriage. I didn't have kids of my own, but I learned fast that love after 50 means showing up. Rides to practice, late night talks, being patient with anger that wasn't really about you. Later, when her eldest had a baby young and needed help, that tiny child became part of our home too. Then her younger daughter had twins 2 years after that. And somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, our house became filled with small shoes by the door, cartoons in the morning, and the kind of noise that makes a man feel useful in the best way. For kids in our life. Not all born to us, but all ours in the way that matters. A blended family stitched together by choice. One night, years after that first rainstorm, I found Hannah in the kitchen after everyone had finally gone to sleep. She wore one of my old shirts, hair loose, reading glasses low on her nose. The sink was full. A tiny sock sat on the counter like a forgotten flag. "You're smiling," she said without looking up. "I'm tired," I admitted. "But it's the good kind." She set the dish towel down and walked to me. She didn't rush. She placed her hands on my chest and leaned in, forehead against mine. The contact was simple, steady, no drama, just belonging. "You know," she said softly, "I hate how our story started." I flinched. "So do I." "But," she continued, lifting her head, eyes shining, "your mistake didn't save anything by itself. What saved us was what you did after. You finally stopped living half awake. You learned to tell the truth while it still mattered." I swallowed hard. In my throat was every apology I'd ever owed, every fear I'd ever buried. Hannah kissed me, slow, brief, tender, and it felt like forgiveness without forgetting. I wasn't proud of the way I got here. I didn't celebrate the damage. But I knew, with a calm I'd never had in my first marriage, that love isn't just the feeling that arrives. It's the courage to stay present once it does.